Picture this. One man walks out to 20,000 screaming fans after 5 long years away from the cage. Everyone in that arena believes they're about to witness a miracle comeback. 69 seconds later, it's over. Not with a punch, not with a knockout, with one wrong step. And what happens next shakes the entire sport of mixed martial arts to its core. This is the story of UFC 329, the night nobody saw coming, the night that turned a triumphant homecoming into a nightmare, and the night a Scouser from Liverpool stole the show before the main event even started. Stay with me, because this story has twists you won't believe. Let's set the scene. It's Saturday night, the 11th of July, 2026. The city is Las Vegas, Nevada, the fight capital of the world. The building is T-Mobile Arena, a place soaked in combat sports history, a building that has hosted some of the wildest nights the sport has ever seen. Tonight, the energy inside those walls is different from anything the building has felt in years. You can feel it the moment you walk through the doors. There's a buzz, a nervous electricity, the kind of feeling you get right before something huge is about to happen. Fans have flown in from Ireland, from England, from all over the world. Some have saved up for months just to be here. Because tonight, after half a decade of waiting, wondering, and hoping, one of the biggest stars the sport has ever produced is finally stepping back into the octagon. His name is Conor McGregor. And if you know anything about combat sports, you know that name carries weight. This is a man who once held 2 UFC championship belts at the same time, a feat nobody had ever done before him. This is a man who turned trash talk into an art form, who filled arenas just by showing up, who made casual fans care about a sport they'd never watched before. But this is also a man who hasn't tasted victory inside the octagon since January of 2020. That's right, over 6 years since his last win. In between then and now, there's been heartbreak. There's been a broken leg, snapped clean in a trilogy fight against Dustin Poirier back in 2021, an injury so gruesome that fans still wince thinking about it. There's been legal trouble. There's been controversy. There's been endless talk about boxing matches that never happened, about comebacks that kept getting pushed back. 5 years. That's how long it had been since Conor McGregor competed inside the UFC's octagon. 5 years of promises, 5 years of soon. And now, finally soon had arrived. Standing across the cage from him tonight is a familiar face, Max Holloway. If you've followed this rivalry, you know these two have history. Back in 2013, more than a decade earlier, they fought for the very first time. That night ended in disaster for Holloway, but it also ended in disaster for McGregor's knee. This time, roles had shifted. Holloway is no longer the green prospect he was back then. He's a legend in his own right now. A former featherweight champion, one of the most respected strikers the sport has ever seen, a man fans affectionately call blessed. And here's the twist that made this fight even more fascinating. Holloway wasn't fighting in his usual weight class. He stepped up to welterweight, a heavier division, just to make this rematch happen. Everybody wanted to see it. The story practically wrote itself. 10 years of history, one blown-out knee in the past, and now a golden opportunity for both men to settle the score in front of the entire world. But before we get to that main event, let's talk about what happened earlier in the night, because trust me, this card was absolutely loaded with fireworks, and one man in particular set the entire building on fire before McGregor even walked out. That man is Paddy Pimblett. If you don't know him yet, you will by the end of this story. They call him the Paddy. He's from Liverpool, England, loud, brash, confident to the point where some fans love him and some fans can't stand him. But nobody can deny his talent inside the cage. Paddy walked into UFC 329 with something to prove. His last fight hadn't gone his way. He'd lost to the reigning lightweight champion, Justin Gaethje, in a fight for the interim title back in January. After that loss, plenty of critics wrote him off. They said he was overhyped. They said he couldn't hang with the elite. They said his run was over before it really began. Standing across from Pimblett tonight was Benoit Saint-Denis, a French fighter with a background as a Special Forces officer, a man known for explosive wrestling and relentless pressure. On paper, a lot of people gave Saint-Denis the edge. He was younger in terms of momentum, dangerous on the ground, and many analysts figured his wrestling could give Pimblett fits. The two men touched gloves, the horn sounded, and the fight began. St. Denis wasted no time. He shot in immediately, looking for an early takedown, trying to put Pimblett on the back foot right from the opening bell. It looked, for a split second, like the doubters might be right, and then everything flipped. As St. Denis drove forward, Pimblett read the attack perfectly. He wrapped around the neck, transitioned smoothly, and locked in a choke. A Darce choke, one of the most technical submissions in all of grappling. St. Denis tried to fight it off, tried to posture, tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. 52 seconds. That's all it took. 52 seconds into the fight, the referee had to step in and save St. Denis from unconsciousness. The arena absolutely erupted. It was one of the fastest finishes of the entire night, and it instantly reminded everyone why people had been talking about Paddy Pimblett in the first place. But it wasn't just the finish that had people buzzing. It was what happened after. Pimblett grabbed the microphone, and he did not hold back. He shouted to the crowd, reminding everyone that people had counted him out after his last loss. He asked the crowd, practically screaming with adrenaline, whether he was finished. The answer, judging by the noise in that building, was a resounding no. Then he did something even bigger. He called out names, big names. He mentioned wanting a rematch with the champion who beat him. He mentioned wanting to fight one of his longtime rivals. And then, with the biggest star in the sport waiting backstage to fight in just a few minutes, Pimblett dropped the name that made the entire building gasp. He said he wanted a shot at Conor McGregor himself. Whether that fight ever happens or not, one thing was clear that night. Paddy Pimblett had just delivered one of the most electric moments of the entire card, and he did it right before the headliner even stepped into the arena. Talk about setting the mood. And it wasn't just Paddy who brought the fireworks early in the night. The undercard, honestly, was one of the most action-packed in recent memory. 9 fights took place before the main card even wrapped up, and 7 of them ended before they went the distance. Fighters were finishing each other left and right, like the entire roster had shown up that night, determined to steal headlines. There was a brutal knockout in the lightweight division where King Green stopped Terrence McKinney with punches to the body. There was a slick submission from Brandon Royval, who choked out his opponent in the 3rd round after a back-and-forth battle. There was a heavyweight blowout where Gable Steveson, the former Olympic wrestling gold medalist turned mixed martial artist, finished his opponent with strikes in under 3 minutes. And in one of the most technically impressive performances of the night, former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker took apart a much bigger opponent using pure boxing craft, wearing him down round by round until the fight was finally stopped in the 3rd. By the time the main card reached its final 2 fights, the crowd inside T-Mobile Arena was already electric, already buzzing, already convinced this was shaping up to be one of the greatest nights in the history of the promotion. Then came the moment everybody had been waiting years for. The lights dimmed, the music hit, and out walked Conor McGregor. He looked the part. He'd shown up with a fresh haircut, the sides shaved down into a sharp new look, almost like a warrior preparing for battle. He strutted with that same swagger fans remembered from his glory days, soaking in the roar of the crowd, playing to the cameras, playing to the moment. For a brief few minutes, it felt like time had rewound. It felt like the old Conor McGregor, the must-see superstar, had never left. The crowd was deafening. Fans who had waited half a decade for this exact walk finally got to see it again, live, in person, in all its theatrical glory. Whatever doubts anyone had about his layoff, whatever questions lingered about his conditioning after 5 years away, they seemed to melt away in that walkout. This was the moment. This was finally happening. Max Holloway made his own entrance, calm and composed as always, the kind of fighter who lets his performance do the talking rather than the theatrics. Both men made their way into the octagon. The referee gave his final instructions. The crowd noise swelled to a deafening pitch. And then the horn sounded. What happened in the next 69 seconds will be talked about for years. McGregor came out aggressive, almost recklessly so. He charged toward the center of the cage and immediately went for a big, flashy kick, the kind of highlight reel strike that used to define his career. But as he came back down from that kick, something went horribly wrong. His right leg buckled beneath him. He crumpled to the canvas. For a split second, the entire arena seemed to freeze, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. Did he slip? Was this some kind of feint? But the look on his face told the real story. This wasn't a slip. Something serious had just happened. McGregor, ever the fighter, refused to stay down. He scrambled back up, determined to continue, driven by pure will and years of pent-up frustration from waiting so long for this exact moment. He tried to plan his weight and attempted another kick. His leg buckled again. He went down a second time. The crowd, which just moments earlier had been roaring with excitement, now fell into a stunned, uneasy murmur. Something was clearly, seriously wrong. Still, McGregor tried to fight on. He got back to his feet a third time, hobbling, clearly unable to trust his own leg, clearly in pain, but refusing to quit. That's when the referee, Mike Beltran, made the call that every fan in that building knew was coming but desperately did not see. He stepped in. He waved it off. The fight was over. 1 minute and 9 seconds. That's all the most anticipated comeback in years had lasted. The arena, packed with tens of thousands of fans who had traveled from across the globe just to witness this moment, fell into a wave of boos. Not necessarily out of anger at McGregor, but out of pure heartbreak and disbelief. This wasn't the ending anyone had paid for. This wasn't the story anyone wanted to tell. Max Holloway, ever the gentleman, immediately turned his attention to consoling his fallen opponent rather than celebrating. When he was handed the microphone afterward, he did something that instantly won over the crowd. Instead of trash-talking a downed opponent, he praised McGregor's toughness for trying to continue fighting on a leg that clearly wasn't cooperating. He acknowledged that the ending left everyone unsatisfied. And then, in a moment that showed real class, he floated the idea of running it back one more time in the future once McGregor had healed, promising the fans that this rivalry wasn't over yet, even if tonight's chapter had ended in disappointment. Backstage, the reaction was just as heavy. Dana White, the head of the promotion, addressed the media afterward, acknowledging that a 5-year layoff in this sport is an incredibly difficult thing to overcome, no matter who you are or how talented you might be. He praised the overall card as one of the best in recent memory, specifically pointing to Paddy Pimblett's explosive performance as one of the highlights of the night. But when it came to McGregor's future, White admitted he genuinely didn't know what would come next. He hadn't heard anything from McGregor's camp about retirement, but he also made it clear that once a fighter starts even thinking about hanging up the gloves, that's usually a sign the end is near. Now, here's where the story gets even more interesting, because what happened in the days following UFC 329 revealed just how complicated this situation really is. Almost immediately, speculation began swirling about the severity of the injury. Was it a torn ACL? Was it damage to the meniscus? Nobody outside McGregor's medical team knew for certain in those first chaotic hours. Dana White himself speculated it looked like a blown ACL based on how the leg buckled and how McGregor struggled to put any weight on it afterward. Medical experts who reviewed the slow-motion replays offered slightly different opinions, with some leaning toward a meniscus tear instead, which would actually carry a very different recovery timeline. An ACL tear could sideline a fighter for the better part of a year, or even longer. A meniscus injury, depending on severity, could heal in a matter of months. The uncertainty left fans in limbo, unsure whether they'd just watch the final chapter of Conor McGregor's fighting career or simply another painful detour on a long and complicated road. Almost immediately, speculation began swirling about the severity of the injury. Was it a torn ACL? Was it damage to the meniscus? Nobody outside McGregor's medical team knew for certain in those first chaotic hours. Dana White himself speculated it looked like a blown ACL based on how the leg buckled and how McGregor struggled to put any weight on it afterward. Medical experts who reviewed the slow-motion replays offered slightly different opinions, with some leaning toward a meniscus tear instead, which would actually carry a very different recovery timeline. An ACL tear could sideline a fighter for the better part of a year or even longer. A meniscus injury, depending on severity, could heal in a matter of months. The uncertainty left fans in limbo, unsure whether they'd just watched the final chapter of Conor McGregor's fighting career or simply another painful detour on a long and complicated road. Naturally, the retirement talk started almost instantly. Former fighters and respected voices within the sport began publicly suggesting that maybe, just maybe, it was time for McGregor to step away for good. The argument wasn't unreasonable. Here was a man in his late 30s, coming off his second catastrophic leg injury at the exact same arena within the span of 5 years. A man who hadn't won an actual fight since January of 2020. From the outside, looking in, the writing seemed to be on the wall. But if you know anything about Conor McGregor, you know he doesn't exit quietly. Just 2 days after the loss, McGregor took to social media with a lengthy, deeply personal message. He spoke about his faith, about resilience, about refusing to be a victim of his circumstances. He confirmed that he would be undergoing surgery to repair the injury. He confirmed that despite everything, despite the pain, despite the doubters, he had every intention of returning to finish out the final fight remaining on his UFC contract. He wasn't retiring. Not yet, anyway. He wanted one more chapter, one more opportunity to walk out of that octagon on his own terms rather than being carried out on a stretcher of public opinion. And here's a detail that adds even more intrigue to the whole situation. Before the fight even happened, McGregor had reportedly already discussed a rough timeline with UFC officials for his final contracted bout, with an eye toward returning sometime in early 2027. He'd also spoken openly about wanting to test free agency once his contract was completed, hinting at massive paydays outside the promotion that built his career. Whether those plans still hold up after this injury remains to be seen. An April 2027 return, which once seemed ambitious but doable, now looks far less certain depending on just how serious the knee damage truly is. Max Holloway, for his part, made it clear he isn't going anywhere either. Despite the anticlimactic nature of their rematch, he expressed genuine interest in running things back a third time once McGregor is healthy enough to compete again. He even suggested he'd be willing to wait until 2027 himself, taking time to rest and spend time with his family in the meantime. It's a strange kind of respect between two rivals whose careers have now been tied together not just by their fights, but by injuries that occurred over a decade apart in the very same building. Meanwhile, Paddy Pimblett's stock couldn't have risen any higher. After his lightning-fast finish and that fiery post-fight call-out, the buzz around him exploded across social media. Reports circulated that after his previous loss to Gaethje, he'd actually gained an enormous wave of new followers almost overnight, a strange but very real modern phenomenon where even losses can boost a fighter's popularity if the effort and heart are visible. Now, riding a spectacular win and an unforgettable call-out, Pimblett finds himself firmly back in the championship conversation, with fans and media buzzing about potential blockbuster matchups on the horizon, whether that's a rematch with the champion who beat him, a long-awaited grudge match against a bitter rival, or even, as he himself suggested, a dream showdown against the very man whose comeback fell apart just minutes after Pimblett left the cage. So, where does this leave everyone? Let's take a step back and really absorb what just happened. Conor McGregor's long-awaited return, a moment 5 years in the making, a moment fans had been begging for since the day his leg snapped against Dustin Poirier, ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. 69 seconds. One kick, one buckled knee, one heartbreaking scene of a legend hobbling and refusing to quit, even when his own body was betraying him in real time. It's the kind of ending that nobody scripted, nobody wanted, and nobody will soon forget. That's the beauty and the brutality of mixed martial arts, all wrapped into one single night. One man's story seemingly nearing its final chapter. Another man's story just beginning to catch fire. Two very different emotions colliding in the very same arena on the very same card within minutes of each other. As for what comes next, so much remains uncertain. Will Conor McGregor ever step back into that octagon again? Will his knee heal well enough to allow him one final run at glory before his contract expires? Will Max Holloway really get his trilogy fight sometime in 2027? And will Paddy Pimblett actually get his wish, whether that's a rematch with the champion, a clash with his longtime rival, or somehow, someway, a fight against the very man he called out just moments before disaster struck? One thing is for certain. UFC 329 will go down as one of the strangest, most emotionally chaotic nights this sport has ever produced. A night that started with electric hype and a walkout that felt like it was pulled straight out of a movie. A night that delivered fast finishes, statement wins, and one legendary call-out that had the whole building buzzing. And a night that ended in silence and heartbreak, with tens of thousands of fans left staring at each other in stunned disbelief, wondering if they had just witnessed the final moments of one of the greatest careers this sport has ever seen. Whatever happens next, whether McGregor returns triumphant or whether this truly was the end of the road, one thing can never be taken away. For 5 years, fans waited. For 5 years, they hoped. And for 69 unforgettable, heartbreaking seconds, Conor McGregor was finally back where he belonged, in the octagon, under the lights, one more time. And somewhere backstage that same night, a new chapter was already being written by a loud, confident kid from Liverpool who refused to let anyone else steal his spotlight, even on the biggest stage in the sport's history. Keep an eye on him, because if there's one thing this crazy sport has taught us over and over again, it's that the next big star is often born on the very same night that a legend story takes its most unexpected turn. That's the story of UFC 329. A night of chaos, a night of heartbreak, a night of statements, and a night that reminded everyone once again why this sport keeps us coming back for more, no matter how unpredictable, no matter how painful, no matter how shocking the ending might be.